right, hey, good morning, folks. Once again, we are back taking a look at the tropics. Today is Friday, September 30th, 2022. This is your morning update. We are still tracking Hurricane Ian, now on final approach to the South Carolina coastline. Ian is set to bring heavy winds, high surge, and plenty of rainfall and severe weather to the parts of the Carolinas and even into Virginia over the next about 24 to 30 hours as Ian makes its final landfall. And the last time in any of our lifetimes, we will say Hurricane Ian, as this is no doubt going to be another retired name from the hurricane naming list. So satellite presentation shows Ian here this morning. We also have some stuff to talk about in the tropics. We will get to that towards the end of the video, but the first half will be pretty much on the landfall of Ian. This is the latest from the National Hurricane Center, fresh off the 11 a.m. advisory. The maximum sustained winds are 85 miles an hour, Category 1 hurricane on the Saffir-Simpson scale, and the movement to the north at 14 miles per hour. Ian is accelerating as it comes into the coastline. The actual center of Ian is going to come ashore right around between Charleston and Myrtle Beach with heavy impacts on both ends, but most of the South Carolina coast will feel significant high-end tropical storm to hurricane type impacts, and those hurricane warnings do extend into parts of North Carolina to Wilmington. Tropical storm warnings in effect up all the way into the Outer Banks and then back down into parts of coastal southeastern Georgia. The hurricane hunters are flying in up until landfall, and this is the last couple of readouts from the hurricane hunters, finding a flight level wind of around 80 knots and a central pressure in the mid 980s. A NOAA buoy actually reported 981, so we're actually into the low 980s most likely, and those SFMR winds at about 70-75 knots, so this all kind of adds up to about 85 miles per hour. Looking at the satellite and radar overlaid, a little bit more zoomed in detail, we can see the core of Ian right here moving in, and there's, I think there's a bit of a radar data feed problem this morning. We're not getting radar out of KMHX, which is Newport, but we are getting some of Charleston's radar, and there is likely about half an eye wall forming in Ian as the core of the system remains tropical, but there's a lot of subtropical influence. You can see this belt of drier air pushing into the coastline here. And there's some sort of warm frontal feature kind of loosely attached to Ian. And you can see here, it's hard to probably read on the map, but there are dew points in the upper 60s, lower 70s, right around the North Carolina coastline. So there's a little bit of a warm frontal influence with the lighter dew points moving back through here. But overall, chilly temperatures moving in. You can see upper 60s belt of upper 60-degree air in this northerly winds pushing into Georgia and all the way down into northern Florida here this morning, where temperatures are much cooler than they were the last couple of days, and where Ian's making landfall with the rainfall. You can see the temperatures in the upper 50s, low 50s back across northern South Carolina, and then mid 50s, low 50s across the plains of central North Carolina. This is some of the impacts still to come from Ian. The storm surge 4 to 7 feet across the area. Still a lot of water rise. This water is going to start picking up quickly in the next couple of hours. We're recording this around 11:30 in the morning, so by early afternoon there'll be a significant water rise at the coastline up and down the South Carolina coast, and even 3 to 5 feet over towards Cape Fear, and then a lower but still not nothing sort of water rise all the way up into North Carolina, and the water rise total should be coming down as those more northerly winds begin to push the water back offshore across northeast Florida and southeastern Georgia. Rainfall still to come, generally 2 to 6 inches, but there will be local amounts that get higher, probably right around Charleston, where that kind of belt of heavy rainfall is moving in. I can see some pockets closer to 10 inches, but this is generally the rainfall forecast. Look how even far away, there's little pockets here and there of 6 to 10 inches across parts of the northern North Carolina coastline and well up into the Outer Banks and whatnot. And look at all the rainfall coming into Virginia and even parts of the Delmarva region. You know, you're getting into pretty far north. There's a lot of tropical moisture pushing up in with Ian, and you've got the mountains and you've got this upper trough all kind of interacting for a significant rainfall event across this area, which I think is actually in somewhat of a drought. So this may be welcome rain, but definitely some concerns for flooding in localized spots, especially. Wind gust forecast still to come. National blend of models showing generally 40s and 50s for your wind gusts across North and South Carolina and pushing well into central North Carolina. I'd like to note some 60-mile-an-hour wind gusts possible in pockets. That will be enough to knock out power lines and knock over trees. European models show some higher wind gusts into the 60. I think this might be overdone a little bit, but I think closer to the South Carolina coastline, you can see wind gusts well into hurricane force into the 80-mile-an-hour range down here, you know, near the Santee River, PD region, Myrtle Beach, South of Charleston, could all be getting some pretty significant wind gusts. So I think down here, these wind gusts may be a little closer to accurate, but elsewhere, I think the National Blend of Models has this pretty well set about what a reasonable expectation of winds could be. I also want to show you the The tornado threat is definitely elevated today across the plains of North Carolina, the North Carolina coastline, and even into parts of extreme southeastern Virginia. The Storm Prediction Center has a slight 2 out of 5 risk, but a 5% categorical risk for for the tornado probabilities. And I want to show you because this radar, like I said, we showed you earlier, MHX is not feeding in, but if I pull up my radar scope, I can show you that there definitely are plenty of thunderstorms moving in, and because we have that kind of warm frontal feature along the coastline here, these bands moving in are going to be they're going to have more instability than they do elsewhere. So the tornado threat is mostly confined to the New Bern, Wilmington, Jacksonville sort of area, but these bands of storms moving in will have the potential to produce damaging wind gusts and the potential for tornadoes with that more unstable air and the more likelihood they're already wanting to rotate, because now you have the land friction, you have the overall rotation of the storm, and you have additional buoyancy to work with as the storm's moving along that warm front. So you're definitely going to have the potential for tornadoes throughout this afternoon here, and just severe weather in general. So while you can see the core of Ian is down here by Charleston, or at least the edge of the storm is on the Charleston edge of the New Bern radar, you do have that potential there. If we go down to Charleston, you can probably see the core of Ian a little bit better. Yeah, you can see here, a little bit of an eye feature trying to reform at least about half of it, and that's going to be a pretty heavy punch when it comes in right there between Myrtle Beach and Charleston, South Carolina. So that's kind of what I got for you guys on the latest on Ian. Again, landfall is imminent. The next hour or two will be the last time anyone says Hurricane Ian makes landfall. Pretty amazing storm, and it wraps up today. This will move in tonight, and the weather conditions will be rainy and windy throughout the night across this region, but Ian will quickly become an extratropical storm. It'll get absorbed up by a trough and get pulled up out of here. So by tomorrow on Saturday, it'll just be cool air and a little bit breezy as Ian moves out, but the rainfall will be ending later tonight. So definitely a high impact event, but definitely something to be aware of and be kind of hunkered down for. But Ian should be a pretty quick event for the North and South Carolina area. Let's go ahead and talk about the rest of the tropics real quick. We have some other things to talk about. Nothing on the short term, nothing on the immediate threat. There are no tropical threats the next 5, 6, 7 days across the eastern part of the United States. But we do have an area of interest marked on the National Hurricane Center's map. We have a wave moving off of Africa. They have this highlighted as a 60% chance of development over the next 5 days. And we also have another area to talk about. We have a tropical wave moving here at about 35 degrees west, moving off to the west. And this is something that Hurricane Center is not tracking yet. It's probably outside of their 5-day development window, but we're also going to be watching this wave carefully. We can see this on the satellite presentation here over on Tropical Tidbits a little bit better. We have this wave off of Africa, a much more broad wave, and this is going to move probably more to the west-northwest over the next couple of days, as the steering flow will probably take this a bit further north into a weakness in the ridge. The tropical wave at about 35 degrees north is very convectively anemic today, but this is the trough axis more or less, and this little guy is going to probably cruise off more to the due west, where conditions probably won't be very favorable the next few days. So we get to the end of the week, probably next week, this will be somewhere in the vicinity of the Antilles, and this upper trough that's here will probably be moved out. It looks like a pocket of more favorable conditions will happen. So I want to explain as we get into October, this is where we kind of change how we track the tropics. We go from um, looking at these long developing MDR type hurricanes that come all the way across. We really haven't had any of this year, and we kind of switch our tracking to the Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico, where the conditions are more favorable this time of year. And like Ian showed us, we have these big troughs that are coming in, and they like to pick things up out of the Caribbean and pull them towards the United States. And that's something we always have to be cognizant of, even into October, where you can have up to Category 5 hurricane landfalls all the way into October. So I always tell y'all, don't sleep on October, and there's a good reason why. This wave will move across, and it's just something we're tracking for now. It is definitely no major threat, but I just want to point out that Ian did the same thing a few weeks ago. It was a silent wave that ran across and didn't develop until it pulled up the coast of South America, went up, developed, and then went across Florida and went up into here. So these waves can eventually become problems, and that's something we'll be tracking down the road. Our computer models do show some development potential. They have a pretty good development chance for the wave coming off of Africa, not showing much for the other wave yet. Maybe in the extended term, you can see some models are kind of pushing it into South America for now, but it's really too early to know. This is the European ensemble and the GFS ensemble showing kind of the same thing, that wave developing but moving into the central Atlantic, where in that case it would be likely to recurve back out to sea, and then some Caribbean development towards the end of the forecast period. We go into the Eastern Pacific real quick. We do have Tropical Storm Orlean expected to become a hurricane sometime tomorrow, and is eventually expected to make landfall sometime early next week in western Mexico, south of the Baja Peninsula. Some probably heavy rain is the most likely threat with this storm. It looks like it will be weakening as it approaches land, but something to keep in mind out there. And there's another area of interest about 600 miles away from Orlean that may develop. And the Joint Typhoon Warning Center shows just one active storm, Tropical Storm Roke, and this is moving away from Japan and moving out, and will not be an issue. And it looks like the Western Pacific is quiet otherwise. So what's up? What I got for you guys this morning on your tropical update, guys. We will probably not have a video for the next couple of days. I'll probably take a little bit of a break, but I'll have all the posts over there on the Redbeard's weather page on Facebook. Follow along there for the daily tropical updates. And next time we get any kind of threat, we'll be back here on YouTube as well. So until then, as always, guys, thanks for watching and have a good one.